He was a billionaire CEO about to lose everything. She was a waitress hiding a brilliant mind. When a $2 billion deal collapsed because of a single mistranslated word, he looked at her and snarled, "Stay out of this." He thought she was just there to pour water. He didn't know she was the only one in the room who could read the fine print. By the time she was done, she hadn't just translated the contract, she had exposed a conspiracy that went to the very top and saved his entire empire. The clinking of silverware against porcelain was the soundtrack to Isabella Rossi's purgatory. At 26, she was supposed to be an associate at a white shoe law firm, drowning in billable hours, not balancing a tray of champagne flutes at the Gilded Griffin. This restaurant wasn't just a restaurant, it was a theater. Perched 60 floors above Manhattan, it was where the masters of the universe came to carve up the world over $300 ribeyes. And Isabella, with a mind that had graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown Law, was just part of the scenery. "Table 7 needs more water, Rossi," hissed Mr. Dubois, the maître d', his voice a venomous whisper. "And you missed a polish mark on that fork. Do you want our guests to think we dine like animals?" "No, Mr. Dubois," Isabella said, her voice flat. She was a ghost in a crisp black uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that did nothing to hide the exhaustion in her eyes. Her life had imploded 2 years ago. Her father, a brilliant microengineer, had been swindled by a predatory venture capital firm, Thorn Dynamics. They had stolen his patents, buried him in legal fees, and left the family with a mountain of debt that rivaled a small country's GDP. The subsequent stress caused her father's massive heart attack, leaving him partially disabled. Isabella had dropped out of her prestigious corporate law track, abandoning her future to pay for his present, one overpriced cocktail at a time. She hated this place. She hated the casual, breathtaking arrogance of the men and women she served. They discussed firing thousands of people with the same emotional detachment as ordering a second bottle of wine. Tonight, the most exclusive private dining room, the Airy, was booked. Isabella felt the tension humming from it the moment the party arrived. She recognized the man at the head of the table instantly. Everyone in New York recognized Damian Knight. He was the titan of Wall Street, the CEO of Knightbridge Holdings. He was sharp, impos existing, and rumored to be utterly ruthless. He looked like a predator in a bespoke suit, all sharp angles, dark hair, and intense ice blue eyes that seemed to be calculating the value of everything they landed on. He was currently staring at his translator, a weaselly-looking man named Arthur Vance, with an expression of profound impatience. "Make sure they understand, Arthur," Damien clipped, not bothering to keep his voice down. "The acquisition of their green volt battery patent is non-negotiable. It's the entire linchpin for the deal." Across the table sat the Japanese delegation from Miyamoto Industries. They were led by an older, impeccably dressed man, Mr. Kenji Tanaka, whose face was a mask of polite neutrality. Isabella knew this deal. It was all over the financial news. Knightbridge Holdings was pivoting from fossil fuels to sustainable tech, and this $2 billion fusion with Miyamoto was their future. Without it, Knightbridge was rumored to be over-leveraged and vulnerable. Vulnerable to men like Marcus Thorne, the same man who had destroyed her father. Isabella moved silently along the wall, refilling water glasses, her presence as insignificant as a draft. But she wasn't just listening to the English, she was listening to the Japanese, and what she heard made her blood run cold. Isabella had a gift, one she'd honed during her legal studies. Languages. She wasn't just conversational, she was fluent. She had spent a year on exchange at Kyoto University, specializing in Japanese commercial contract law. She understood not just the words, but the intent, the subtle, high-stakes dance of honor and implication that defined Japanese business. Arthur Vance, the translator, was a disaster. His Japanese was technically correct but clumsy, like a textbook reading. He lacked all cultural nuance. When Damian Knight said, "This is our final firm offer," Vance translated it with a bluntness that came across as an ultimatum, an insult. Isabella saw Mr. Tanaka's knuckles whiten around his pen. "Mr. Knight," Vance said, turning back to Damien, "Mr. Tanaka says they are concerned about the intellectual property protections post-acquisition." Damien sighed, rubbing his temples. "Tell them our legal framework is ironclad," Sullivan and Croft reviewed it. The IP is completely secured within the joint venture. It's standard. Vance nodded, cleared his throat, and began to speak. He was translating the complex legal terms from the contract summary in front of him. He got to the most critical section, the liability and dissolution clause. This was it, the $2 billion moment. Isabella froze. Her hand, holding a heavy silver pitcher, trembled. Mr. Tanaka's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. His legal counsel, a younger woman named Emmy, dropped her chopsticks. They clattered loudly on the porcelain rest. Vance, oblivious, continued. Damien, sensing the sudden chill, snapped, "What? What's wrong now?" Mr. Tanaka spoke in slow, deliberate Japanese. "Vance-san, please repeat that clause." Vance repeated it, verbatim. A quiet, furious discussion erupted among the Japanese delegation. "What did you say?" Damien demanded. "Arthur, what did you tell them?" "I just translated the clause, Mr. Knight," Vance said, sweating. "It's right here. Miyamoto Industries waives priority rights to all derivative IP upon termination." Isabella wanted to scream. That wasn't what priority rights meant in this context. The English legal term, priority rights, related to patent filings, was not the same as the word he had used, yusenken. In this contractual context, he had just told them that if the deal ever ended, Miyamoto would lose all rights to the original technology they were bringing into the partnership. He hadn't just mistranslated. He had turned a partnership into a hostile takeover. He had told them that Knightbridge Holdings was planning to steal their core technology. Mr. Tanaka stood up. His face, once polite, was now carved from granite. "Knight-san?" Mr. Tanaka said, his voice dangerously quiet. His team was already packing their briefcases. "This meeting is over. We find your terms insulting. To suggest Miyamoto Industries would surrender its legacy, it is unthinkable. We are leaving." "What? Insulting?" Damien shot to his feet, his face darkening with rage. "Arthur, what the hell did you say?" "I told them what it says," Vance shrieked, holding up the paper. "This is a $2 billion deal. Fix it," Damien roared. "I can't." The Japanese team was at the door. The deal was dead. Damien Knight's company was about to implode. It was a reflex. It was the lawyer in her, the part that couldn't stand to see injustice, whether it was her father's or this. "He's wrong," Isabella said. The word dropped into the silent, toxic room like a stone. Damien Knight, Mr. Tanaka, and the entire panicked delegation turned to look at her. She was just a waitress, standing there with a water pitcher, her face pale. Damien's eyes narrowed into slits. His voice was low and lethal. "What did you say?" "He's wrong," Isabella repeated, her voice shaking but gaining strength. She put the pitcher down. "The translator, he's wrong." Arthur Vance sputtered. "How dare you? I am a certified level 1 translator. You're a waitress." "You used yusenken," Isabella said, ignoring him, her eyes locking on Damien. "You translated priority rights from the patent filing context. But in this liability clause, you told them they were waiving their preferential rights to their own core IP. You told them that upon dissolution, Knightbridge gets their battery technology." Damien stared at her, his mind clearly struggling to process what was happening. Isabella, emboldened, took a step forward. "Sir, I believe the English text refers to priority in the context of newly filed derivative patents, correct? Not the core Greenvolt patent itself?" Damien was speechless. He just nodded. "That's not what he said," Isabella said. "He told them you were taking everything." The air left the room. Mr. Tanaka, who had paused at the door, looked at Isabella with a new, sharp interest. Damien, however, was a man clinging to the wreckage, and he saw Isabella not as a savior, but as another problem. He saw her as an embarrassment, an employee undermining his expensive, certified translator in front of his partners. "I am handling this," Damien snapped, turning his back on her to face Vance. "Arthur, clarify it. Now." I... Vance was white as a sheet. He knew she was right. Isabella stepped forward again, desperate. "Mr. Knight, they're leaving. Please, let me just..." Damien spun around. His face was thunderous, his authority challenged in his most vulnerable moment. He pointed a finger directly at her. "Stay out of this." The words were a gunshot. "You are a waitress," he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your only job here is to pour the water and get out. You have no idea what you're talking about. You've probably just cost me this entire deal by embarrassing my team. Get out!" Isabella flinched, the public humiliation stinging like a slap. Mr. Dubois, the maître d', was hovering by the door, his face purple with rage, already signaling for security. She was fired, she knew it. But then, a new voice cut through the tension. "Wait." It was Mr. Tanaka. He had walked back into the room, his gaze fixed entirely on Isabella. He ignored Damien Knight completely. He spoke to Isabella in rapid, formal Japanese. "You, waitress, you said you studied at Kyoto University. Which faculty? Who was your professor?" Isabella, stunned, replied in perfect Keigo, honorific Japanese. "The Faculty of Law, Tanaka-sama. I was under Professor Masamune. My dissertation was on the 2014 revisions to the Commercial Code regarding intellectual property." A flicker of shock crossed Mr. Tanaka's face. Professor Masamune was a legend, Japan's most revered legal mind. Mr. Tanaka looked at Damien Knight. "Knight-san, this man," he gestured to Vance, "is an idiot. She," he pointed to Isabella, "is a lawyer. We will speak with her, or we will leave. Your choice." Damien Knight didn't get to be a billionaire by being stupid, only by being arrogant, and he knew when his arrogance had hit a wall. He stared at Isabella, his expression a chaotic mix of fury, humiliation, and dawning realization. He looked at the sweating, useless form of Arthur Vance. "You're fired. Get your things. Send me the bill for your incompetence." He then looked at Isabella, his jaw tight. "You, sit." He gestured to the chair Vance had just vacated. For the next 2 hours, Isabella Rossi, in her waitress uniform, sat at the head of a $2 billion negotiation. She didn't just translate, she mediated. She flew between English and Japanese, but also between corporate American and Japanese business. She didn't just correct the mistranslation, she identified the ambiguity in the original English text. "The problem is here, Mr. Knight," she said, pointing to a line in the contract summary. "The term priority right is undefined in the appendices. It's legally vague. Mr. Tanaka is correct to be concerned." Damien watched her, silent. She wasn't just a translator. She was a high-powered attorney, and she was dissecting a contract that his own 1,500 an hour lawyers at Sullivan and Croft had drafted. She suggested new language, a core technology safeguard clause, which she drafted right there on a notepad in both languages. It was brilliant. It protected Knightbridge's interest in the new tech while permanently shielding Miyamoto's legacy tech. By the time they finished, Mr. Tanaka was smiling. He bowed not to Damien, but to Isabella. "Rossi-san," he said in Japanese, "you have saved this partnership. We will review this new language and reconvene. I am very impressed." After the Japanese team left, the room was silent. Damien Knight stood by the window, looking out over the city. Isabella was quietly gathering the discarded napkins. Her shift was over. She was still, presumably, fired. "Why are you here?" Damien asked, his voice quiet, without the earlier malice. "What?" "At this restaurant. You're a Georgetown lawyer. You speak Japanese like a native. You understand international contract law better than my own legal team. Why are you polishing glasses?" Isabella looked down at her hands. "Life, it gets complicated. My father. Debt." "What kind of debt?" "The kind that doesn't wait for you to pass the bar." She grabbed her tray. "Excuse me, sir. I have to clock out." "Stop." He turned from the window. The ice in his eyes had melted, replaced by a sharp, calculating intensity. He pulled a black, heavy metal business card from his wallet and slid it across the table. "My office, Knightbridge Holdings. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. "Sir, I don't—" "That wasn't a request," Damien said. "You're not a waitress anymore. You're my new consultant. I don't know what your debt is, but I can guarantee your new salary will cover it. Don't be late." Isabella looked at the card. Damien Knight, CEO, Knightbridge Holdings. She walked out of the Gilded Griffin for the last time, not as a disgraced waitress, but as the most unlikely hire in Wall Street history. The lobby of Knightbridge Holdings was designed to intimidate. It was a cathedral of black marble and smoked glass, silent save for the quiet thud of the stock ticker. Isabella, dressed in the only decent suit she owned, an ill-fitting 5-year-old relic from her law school interviews, felt smaller than ever. She was sent up to the 80th floor, the executive wing. Damien Knight's office was larger than her entire apartment. "Ms. Rossi," he said, not looking up from his terminal. "You're late." "It's 7:59, sir." He looked up, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Good. Have a seat. My internal counsel is drawing up your employment contract. $350,000 base, plus bonus. We will settle your family's outstanding medical and legal debts. All of them. Consider it a signing bonus." Isabella felt the blood rush from her head. She gripped the armrests of the chair. That was life-changing. It was freedom. "In return," Damien continued, "you work for me directly. Your title is Special Analyst, International Strategy. Your first job is to review every single document related to the Miyamoto deal, the entire diligence file, the one my lawyers at Sullivan and Croft already billed me $6 million for. I want to know what else they missed. Sir, I haven't passed the bar exam. I'm not technically a lawyer." "I don't care," Damien said. "I have plenty of lawyers. I need someone who can think." "You have 48 hours. For the next 2 days, Isabella didn't sleep. She was given a temporary office and access to the Knightbridge data vault. She read thousands of pages of patent filings, financial audits, and technical specifications. Damien was right to be suspicious. His lawyers had missed something. It was buried in a dense appendix of Japanese patent filings. A small secondary patent for a thermal regulation coil, filed by Miyamoto but cross-licensed to a third-party shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. Isabella ran a search on the shell company. The blood drained from her face. The shell company, Aperture Solutions, was a subsidiary of Thorne Dynamics. Marcus Thorne, the man who destroyed her father. He was already inside the Miyamoto deal. He had a legal claim, however small, to a piece of the technology Damien was about to buy. If the deal closed, Thorne could trigger an injunction, halt the integration, and bleed Knightbridge dry in court, forcing Damien to buy him out at an exorbitant price. Isabella ran to Damien's office. He was in a meeting, but she didn't care. She burst in. "He's here," she panted. "Marcus Thorne. He's in the deal." The other executives in the room looked at her with open hostility. One man in particular watched her with a cold, appraising stare. He was handsome, polished, and had the eyes of a predator. Isabella recognized him. Julian Lowe, the executive vice president of acquisitions. He was Damien's right-hand man. Damien stood up, analyzed her face, and said to his team, "Everyone out, now." For the next hour, Isabella laid out the complex legal trail. Damien listened, his face growing darker and darker. When she finished, he slammed his fist on his desk. "Julian!" he yelled. The door opened, and Julian Lowe entered, smiling smoothly. "Problem, Damien?" "You ran the diligence on this," Damien said, his voice a low growl. "You vetted Sullivan and Croft. You told me the IP was clean. How did you miss Marcus Thorne?" Julian's smile didn't waver, but his eyes darted to Isabella. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. "Damien, this is a minor filing, a nuisance claim at best. Thorne is just a patent troll. We can crush him in court." "He's not a troll. He's a shark," Damien shot back. "And he's got his teeth in our engine block. He could sink this entire venture. And you," he turned to Isabella, "you found this in 48 hours?" "She's diligent," Julian said, his voice silken. "But perhaps, Damien, you should ask yourself how she found it so quickly. She seems very familiar with Mr. Thorne's operations. It's almost convenient. A waitress finds the one thing a multi-million-dollar law firm missed? It's a bit much." The implication hung in the air, that Isabella was a plant, a spy for Thorne. Isabella felt her stomach clench. "No, my family, Marcus Thorne destroyed my family. That's why I recognize the shell company. I would never work for him." Damien looked from Julian's skeptical smirk to Isabella's passionate, terrified face. "Julian," Damien said, Get Sullivan and Croft on the line. Get Thorne on the line. Buy the patent, bury him, I don't care what it costs. Just get him out of my deal. And from now on, Ms. Rossi is on the Miyamoto team permanently. She reviews everything. Everything. Julian's mask of pleasantry cracked. Damien, you can't be serious. You're putting this girl in charge of a multi-billion-dollar acquisition? She's the only one who's proven competent, Damien said. Now get it done. Julian left, but not before giving Isabella one last look. It was a promise. I will destroy you. The following weeks were a blur. Isabella moved out of her tiny apartment and into a corporate suite. The family debts vanished, paid off by the Knightbridge Finance Department. For the first time in years, she could breathe. But the work was suffocating. She and Damien were the first in the office and the last to leave. They worked side by side, diving deep into the complexities of the Miyamoto integration. The deal was far from done. It was entering its most critical phase. A new dynamic was forming between them. The CEO and the waitress were gone. They were two minds, sharp and fast, working in sync. Damien, away from his board and executives, was different. He was still demanding, but he was also brilliant and at times surprisingly vulnerable. My father built this company on oil, he confessed one night, over takeout containers at 2 a.m., his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. He died thinking I was too soft to run it. He thought pivoting to green energy was a fool's errand. This Miyamoto deal, it's not just about money. It's about proving him wrong. It's about building something that actually lasts. Isabella saw the immense pressure he was under. She also saw that his arrogance was a shield, protecting him from the vultures like Julian Lowe and Marcus Thorne. "You're not soft," she said quietly, reviewing a spreadsheet. "You're just not blind. The future isn't in crude oil. You see that. Your father, he just didn't get to see you finish." He looked at her, really looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze had nothing to do with business. The air crackled. "You're wasted in law, Isabella," he murmured. "You're a strategist." "I'm not even a lawyer," she reminded him. "It doesn't matter." But as Isabella and Damien grew closer, Julian Lowe grew more desperate. He saw his influence, his power, in his position as heir apparent, all slipping away to a waitress. He had been the one to vet Arthur Vance, the translator. It had been a deliberate, subtle sabotage. Vance wasn't supposed to kill the deal, just stall it, cause friction, and make Julian look good when he fixed it. Isabella's appearance had ruined his plan. Now he had to create a new one. If the deal was going to succeed, he would make sure Isabella wasn't there to see it. He needed to remove her, and he needed to do it in a way that implicated her for the very sabotage he had started. Julian Lowe began to build his case. He was the EVP of acquisitions. He had access to everything. He started by creating a ghost in the machine. He used a high-level admin key, one he'd had for years, to access the Knightbridge financial servers. He created a new wire transfer instruction, routing a small $50,000 consulting fee from a Knightbridge offshore account to a new anonymous account in the Cayman Islands. Then with a few keystrokes, he linked that anonymous account's Know Your Customer KYC file to a name, Isabella Rossi. He then moved to the email servers. He fabricated an email chain using a burner account, making it look like Isabella was communicating with a handler. He leaked small, insignificant pieces of information, publicly available data, but enough to look like espionage. He backdated the entries. He made the first transfer look like it happened the day after she was hired. He made it look like her signing bonus was just the first payment in a long-running conspiracy. He had the motive, her family's crushing debt. He had the opportunity, her unprecedented access to the Miyamoto file. And now he had the evidence. He just had to wait for the perfect moment to strike. The moment came 3 days before the final signing. The Miyamoto deal was finalized. The new contract, based on Isabella's core technology safeguard clause, was approved by both boards. Mr. Tanaka and his team were flying to New York for the ceremony. The $2 billion deal was about to become a reality. The mood at Knightbridge was electric. Damien had called a full executive meeting to prep for the signing. "This is a flawless execution, team," Damien said, actually smiling. I want to personally thank Isabella. Without her, this deal would have died on the floor of the Gilded Griffin. All eyes went to Isabella. She blushed, unused to the praise. Julian Lowe chose that exact moment. That's a very touching sentiment, Damien, Julian said, his voice smooth and concerned. But I'm afraid we have a problem, a significant one, regarding Ms. Rossi. The room went silent. What are you talking about, Julian? Damien said, his smile vanishing. I was running a final security audit on the deal, just as a precaution, Julian said, pulling a red confidential folder from his briefcase. And I found irregularities, financial irregularities. They seemed to follow Miss Rossi. Isabella felt her heart stop. What? What are you talking about? Julian opened the folder and passed a document to Damien. This is a wire transfer, Damien, for $50,000, sent from our Geneva holding to an offshore account, an account opened in Miss Rossi's name. Damien looked at the paper. I didn't authorize this. What is this? I believe, Julian said, his voice dripping with false regret. It's a payment for services rendered. Look at the next page. He handed over the fabricated email chain. It showed Isabella communicating with an anonymous address, discussing patent vulnerabilities and negotiation weak points. The final email read, Thorne is pleased. The next payment will be processed after the deal is signed and the real weakness is exploited. Thorne, Damien whispered, his face turning pale. He looked at Isabella, his eyes searching. Isabella? What is this? That's not me, Isabella cried, standing up. I've never seen those emails. I don't have an offshore account. Julian, this is insane. Is it? Julian said softly. You were destitute. Your family was ruined by Marcus Thorne. But then conveniently, you're in the right place at the right time to save Damien's deal. And conveniently, you're the only one who can find the Thorne patent. A patent that, I've discovered, was already in the process of being sold? It was a fake threat, Isabella, wasn't it? Julian spun his narrative, each word a perfectly placed nail in her coffin. You didn't save the deal, you infiltrated it. You found the Thorne patent to make Damien trust you, to get you inside. You played him. You've been feeding information to Marcus Thorne all along. This $50,000 was just your first payment. No! Isabella was trembling, looking at Damien, desperate. Damien, you know me. You know what Thorne did to my family. I would die before I helped him. Damien was silent. He was looking at the evidence. The bank transfer, the emails, her motive, the impossible fairy tale story of her discovery. It was, as Julian said, a bit much. His trust, which had been so hard won, shattered. He had been played. A ruthless billionaire, conned by a waitress. His father's voice echoed in his head. Too soft. Damien, please, Isabella wept. He looked up, and the ice was back in his eyes. It was colder than the 80th floor glass. I gave you everything, he whispered, his voice shaking with a cold rage she had never heard. I saved your family. I put you in the most powerful room in my company. And this is how you repay me? You were a plant. All of it. A lie. It's not a lie. Julian, Damien said, turning his back on her. Call security. Damien, she screamed. You're fired, Ms. Rossi, Damien said, his voice dead. You will be escorted from the building. You are to have no contact with this company or Miyamoto Industries ever again. If I see you or your name or your shadow cross my path, I will use the full weight of my legal power to have you prosecuted for corporate espionage. Am I clear? Julian Lowe smiled as two large security guards entered the room. Damien, don't do this, Isabella begged, tears streaming down her face. You're being blind. He's lying. Julian is lying. Check the servers. Check the real logs, not just his printouts. Get her out of my sight, Damien ordered. The guards grabbed her arms. You're a fool, Damien, she yelled as they dragged her past the shocked executives. You're a blind, arrogant fool, and he's going to destroy you. The doors slammed shut. Isabella Rossi was back on the street, her life destroyed for a second time. Julian Lowe was triumphant. A close call, Damien, he said, patting his boss on the shoulder. But I caught it. Don't worry, I'll handle the Miyamoto signing personally. I'll make sure every I is dotted. Damien just nodded, sinking into his chair, the picture of a betrayed man. But as the day wore on, as the adrenaline faded, Damien couldn't shake Isabella's last words. Check the servers, check the real logs, not just his printouts. Why would she say that? If she was guilty, why demand a deeper look? He had built his empire on trusting his gut, and his gut was now churning with acid. He had trusted Julian. Julian had vetted the failed translator, Arthur Vance. Julian had missed the Thorn patent, and Julian had found the evidence against Isabella, just in the nick of time. It was too neat. Damien locked his office door. He didn't call his internal IT, he called his fixer, a man who didn't officially exist on the Knightbridge payroll. Mac Malone. A grizzled, old-school cybersecurity legend, Damien kept on retainer for special projects. Mac, Damien said into his secure phone, I have a problem. I need you to run a deep dive trace. Off the books. I'm sending you the credentials of my EVP, Julian Lowe. I want to know every keystroke he's made in the last 6 months. And I need it. I need it yesterday. It'll cost you, Mr. Knight, Mac's gravelly voice came back. I don't care, Damien said, staring at the red, confidential folder on his desk. Burn the network down if you have to. Find out what he's been doing. While Mac worked his dark magic, Damien paced his office like a caged panther. He tried to focus on the Miyamoto signing, now less than 24 hours away, but all he could see was Isabella's face, a mask of genuine, heartbreaking betrayal. He had called her a fool. What if he was the fool? His phone buzzed. It was Mac. You're not going to like this, Knight, Mac said. Talk to me. Your boy Lowe, he's not just a snake, he's a hydra. The fabricated emails to frame the girl? That was amateur hour, sloppy. He used a high-level admin key to plant them, but he didn't cover his IP trace. It came from his own terminal. Damien felt the floor drop out. What? Oh, it gets better, Mac said. The $50,000 transfer? That was a decoy, a toy. Julian Lowe has been moving millions for the past 6 months. He wasn't working for Marcus Thorne. He was playing him. What do you mean? Lowe used Thorne's initial attempt to get inside your deal as a cover. He's not a double agent. He's a triple agent. He's not trying to sabotage the Miyamoto deal for Thorne. He's letting it succeed. That doesn't make sense. It does when you see who he's really selling to, Max said, his voice grim. He's not leaking diligence. He's planning to leak the final, signed patent, the Green Volt core tech. He's selling your entire $2 billion acquisition to your biggest competitor, a third party, CyberCorp Global. They're wiring $100 million to his personal holding company in Malta the hour the Miyamoto deal is signed. Damien collapsed into his chair. It all made sense. The bad translator, the missed patent, framing Isabella. Julian wanted her gone because she was the only one smart enough to see what he was doing. He needed to be the only one handling the final contract. Mac, the contract, the signing is tomorrow. He's in the system right now, Knight, Mac said urgently. He's in the final Miyamoto PDF. He just made a last-minute administrative change to Article 14. Damien's blood turned to ice. What did he change? I don't know, it's encrypted. But it's his kill shot. Whatever it is, it's how he's giving CyberCorp the keys to the kingdom. Damien was up, sprinting for the door. Where is she? Where is Isabella Rossi? No idea, boss, but you better find her, because she's the only one who can read the fine print. Damien Knight didn't bother with his driver. He took his private elevator to the garage and got behind the wheel of his black Audi R8, tearing out into the Manhattan traffic. He went to her corporate suite first. It was empty. The doorman said she'd left hours ago crying with a single suitcase. He tried her cell, disconnected. He felt a primal panic rising in his chest. He had destroyed her. He had taken away her job, her reputation, and her hard-won security. He had thrown her back to the wolves. Where would she go? Where does someone go when they have nothing left? He slammed the steering wheel. Think, Damien, think. She had nowhere to go. She would go back to the only place she knew. He sped across the bridge, tires screeching, pushing the car to its limit. He drove to the one place in the world he never wanted to see again, the Gilded Griffin. He ran inside, ignoring the stares of the wealthy patrons. Mr. Dubois, the maitre d', intercepted him. "Sir, do you have a reservation?" "Where is she?" Damien yelled, scanning the dining room. "Where is Isabella Rossi?" "Ms. Rossi is no longer an employee of—" "I know that." Damien grabbed the man's lapels. "Is she here? Did she come here?" "The kitchen," Dubois squeaked, terrified. "She's in the back, asking Mr. Lefebvre for her old job." Damien shoved past him, through the swinging kitchen doors, into the chaotic, steamy hell of a restaurant kitchen. And there she was. She was sitting on a milk crate by the dishwashing station, her expensive corporate suit splattered with grime. She was talking to the head chef, her face pale and streaked with dried tears, her shoulders slumped in utter defeat. "I'll do anything," she was saying, her voice hoarse. "Dishwashing, prep, anything. I need the work. Please, chef." "Isabella." She flinched, thinking it was another cook. She turned and her eyes widened in shock and fear. Damien Knight was standing there, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. She immediately stood up, backing away. "Get away from me," she spat, her voice trembling with hatred. "Haven't you done enough? You're going to have me arrested for trespassing too?" "Isabella," he said, taking a step forward, his hands raised. Julian, he framed you. All of it." "You think I care?" she cried, grabbing a dirty towel as if to throw it. "You believed him. You believed I was a traitor after everything. You threw me out. You humiliated me." I know," he said, and the arrogance was gone. His voice was raw. "Isabella, I was a fool. I was a blind, arrogant fool, just like you said. I was so afraid of being soft, of being conned, that I let my real enemy poison me against the one person who was loyal." She just stared at him, her chest hitching with sobs. "He's not working for Thorne," Damien said, speaking quickly. "He's working for CyberCorp Global. He's selling the Miyamoto tech. The signing is in 1 hour. He's at the office with Mr. Tanaka right now. He's changed the contract, Isabella. He's added a back door, and I can't see it. I can't read it. I don't know what he did." He was standing in front of her, the titan of Wall Street, completely broken. "I can't do this without you. I need you." Isabella looked at the man who had destroyed her, and she saw the truth. He was telling the truth, and it wasn't about him anymore. It was about the work. It was about justice. It was about not letting the Julians and the Marcuses of the world win. "Article 14, she whispered. "What?" "If I were him, I'd hide it in the compliance and review clauses. Article 14. It's the densest, most boring part of the contract. No one ever reads it." She dropped the towel. "Where is the contract?" "It's at the office. We have to go. Now." She didn't hesitate. She ran past him out of the kitchen, her ruined suit sticking to her. Damien followed. They sprinted out of the restaurant, past the stunned Mr. Dubois, and into the waiting Audi. "You're not going to make it," she said, looking at the gridlocked traffic. "I will," he said, and mounted the curb, blazing down a bus lane, the horn blaring. They burst into the 80th floor boardroom with 30 seconds to spare. The scene was calm. Mr. Tanaka was at the table, smiling. His legal team was present. And at the head of the table, in Damien's chair, sat Julian Lowe, a $5,000 pen in his hand, pushing a thick leather-bound document toward the Japanese CEO. "And if you'll just sign here, Tanaka-sama," Julian was saying, "we can begin our very prosperous future." "Don't sign it!" Damien roared. The room froze. Julian Lowe's head snapped up. His face for 1 second was a mask of pure reptilian shock. It was the face of a man whose $100 million payday had just evaporated. "Damien," he said, trying to recover, standing up. "What is the meaning of this? And why is she here? Security! Get her out!" "No," Damien said, walking slowly into the room. His security team, the ones who had dragged Isabella out, now filed in behind him. They stood by the door, blocking Julian's exit. "Tanaka-sama," Damien said, ignoring Julian, "my sincerest apologies for this interruption, but you are about to sign a fraudulent document." "Fraudulent?" Mr. Tanaka said, pulling his hand back from the pen. Julian, Damien said, his voice dropping to absolute zero. It's over. Cybercorp Global isn't getting the patent. Julian's face went white. He knew. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. He's been selling us out, Damien said to the room. He framed Ms. Rossi to get her out of the way. He intended to let this deal close, only to sell the Greenvolt patent to a competitor. He was going to destroy both Miyamoto and Knightbridge. Lies, Julian shouted. He's lost his mind. This woman has poisoned him. Isabella, Damien said. The contract. Isabella, dirty, exhausted, but with fire in her eyes, walked to the table. She flipped past the executive summaries, past the signature pages, deep into the document, to the section she knew by heart. Article 14, she said, her voice ringing with authority. Subsection B, Post-Acquisition Technical Compliance Review. She ran her finger along the text. Julian had changed it. The original text said reviews would be handled by an independent Big Four accounting firm. The new text read, will be handled by the joint venture's appointed compliance auditor, Geneva Strategic Solutions. Isabella looked up at Julian. Geneva Strategic Solutions? That's your shell company in Malta, isn't it, Julian? The one linked to Cybercorp Global? Julian didn't answer. He just stared. Isabella explained to Mr. Tanaka, switching to flawless Japanese. Tanaka-sama, this clause gives a shell company, owned by him, sole authority to review the source code for compliance. It's not a review. It's a legal backdoor to steal the technology. He would have had full access to your code within 24 hours of signing. Mr. Tanaka read the clause, his eyes widening in horror, then in fury. He looked at Julian Lowe with an expression of such contempt that Julian actually recoiled. You tried to disgrace my company, Mr. Tanaka said in English, his voice shaking. You tried to disgrace me. It's just a misunderstanding, Julian babbled, looking at the security guards. Take him, Damien ordered. Julian Lowe made a desperate lunge for the door, but the guards were on him. He was tackled, screaming profanities and threats, before being hauled to his feet in handcuffs. You'll never prove it, he yelled as they dragged him out. That waitress won't. The door slammed shut, cutting him off. The boardroom was silent. The $2 billion deal lay open on the table, poisoned by Julian's ink. Mr. Tanaka looked at Damien, then at Isabella. He was not angry. He looked impressed. It seems, Knight-san, Mr. Tanaka said, you have a problem with traitors in your company, but you also have a great gift for finding loyalty. He turned to Isabella. Rossi-san, you have saved my company's legacy twice. I will not forget this. He then picked up the fraudulent contract and ripped it in half. Damien's heart stopped. Mr. Tanaka, please. Mr. Tanaka smiled. We will not sign this document. We will sign the original document, the one Ms. Rossi drafted. His aide produced an identical leather-bound folder, the correct one they had brought from Tokyo. He laid it on the table. Our partnership is with Knightbridge Holdings, and, he said, looking pointedly at Isabella, with its special analyst. 1 hour later, the correct, untainted deal was signed. The boardroom, which had been a war zone, was now filled with the bright, artificial flashes of cameras. Damien Knight and Kenji Tanaka shook hands, their smiles broad and genuine for the press. The $2 billion deal was done, but in every photograph, standing just behind Damien, was Isabella Rossi. She was still in her grime-stained 5-year-old suit. Her dark hair was falling out of its severe bun, and there was a smudge of kitchen grease on her cheek. She looked utterly exhausted, completely out of place, and yet she was the unmistakable center of power in the room. She hadn't just saved the deal, she was the architect of its final, successful form. After the photographers were shuffled out, Mr. Tanaka and his team prepared to leave for a celebratory dinner. He approached Isabella, bowing deeply, not as one would to a subordinate, but to an equal. Rossi-san, he said in Japanese, his voice full of respect. My company and my family are in your debt. What you did today, it was a masterwork of both law and honor. If a man like Knight-san ever fails to see your value, he gave Damien a pointed look, you will have a permanent and very senior position waiting for you in Tokyo. You are too kind, Tanaka-sama, Isabella replied, bowing in return. I am just glad the truth was found. Truth is not found, Rossi-san, Mr. Tanaka said, smiling. It is fought for. A pleasure. With a final, respectful nod, the Japanese delegation left. The boardroom doors clicked shut, plunging the room into a heavy silence. The only sounds were the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sirens of the city below. The ripped, fraudulent contract still lay in a heap on the floor by the waste bin. Isabella stood by the vast window, looking down at the rivers of light that were the streets of Manhattan. She felt the adrenaline finally drain away, leaving a bone-deep weariness and a profound sense of whiplash. This morning she had been a corporate pariah, a suspected traitor. An hour ago, she had been a desperate, unemployed woman begging for a dishwashing job. Now, what was she? She saw her reflection in the glass, the smudged, tired face, the cheap, ill-fitting suit. Behind her, she heard Damien move. He wasn't the Titan anymore. His steps were hesitant. He stopped a few feet away from her. Isabella, he said, his voice quiet, raw. She turned. What I did to you, he said, and the words seemed to pain him to speak. It was unforgivable. I didn't just fire you. I tried to break you. I stood where Julian stood, and I called you a traitor. I used your family's pain against you. I threw you out in front of everyone. I let my pride, my ego, and my terrifying fear of being played make me a monster. And I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Isabella just watched him. She had wanted to hear this, but the words felt strange, like they belonged to a different lifetime. You believed him, Damien, she said, her voice flat, not an accusation, just a fact. You believed it so fast, after all we'd worked on. I know, he said, taking a step closer. His eyes were desperate. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that up to you. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking. You came back. After what I did, after how I treated you, you still got in that car. You still saved this company. You saved me from myself. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the black heavy metal card case. He slid one out, but this one was different from the last. He held it out to her. She took it. Her hands were still trembling slightly. Isabella Rossi, Chief Strategy Officer and Head of International Relations, Knightbridge Holdings. She stared at the card, her vision blurring for the first time that night. Chief Strategy Officer, she whispered. Damien, this is an executive board position. I told you I haven't even passed the bar. I don't care if you ever pass the bar, he said, his voice fierce. The bar needs to pass you. Lawyers interpret the rules, Isabella. You see the game. You see the board, you see the players, and you see the moves 10 steps ahead. I don't want you on my legal team. I want you by my side. I want you to be the person who tells me when I'm being a blind, arrogant fool. It seems, he added with a grimace, it's a full-time job. He looked at her, his vulnerability total. That is, if you'll take it, if you'll have it. I understand completely if you walk out that door and never look back. I would deserve it. Isabella looked down at the card, the embossed letters feeling heavy in her palm. She looked at the man in front of her. She saw the man who had yelled, "Stay out of this." She saw the man who had called her a liar. But she also saw the man who had torn across the city, who had humbled himself in a kitchen, and who was now offering her the one thing she'd always wanted. Not just a job, but recognition. A slow smile, the first real one of the day, touched her lips. Well, she said, tapping the card against her palm, the title is good, and the salary, I'm assuming it's ridiculous. A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washed over Damien's face. Beyond ridiculous, he confirmed, his own smile finally returning. Good, she said, but the office, I'm going to need the corner one, the one with the dual aspect view of the park and the river. Julian's old office. Damien laughed, a real, genuine laugh that echoed through the empty boardroom. It was the sound of a $2 billion weightlifting. The office is yours, he declared. I'll have it fumigated, scoured, and repainted. New furniture, anything you want. Consider it a blank slate. Good, she said again, finally taking a steadying breath. She looked down at her ruined clothes. "I'll need a few other things." "Anything," he said, his voice dropping, the intensity back in his eyes, but this time it wasn't ice. It was fire. "Anything you want, Isabella. It's yours." She held his gaze, the power in the room having now, finally and permanently shifted. "A new suit," she said. "Several, actually. And a car. I am never taking the subway again." Damian Knight stepped forward, closing the final gap between them. "Whatever you want," he murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips. She hadn't just saved his $2 billion deal. She hadn't just saved his company. She had saved him. And as he looked at the brilliant, exhausted, and terrifyingly beautiful woman in front of him, he knew that Chief Strategy Officer was just the beginning. He hadn't just found his new partner in business, he had found his partner in everything. And that's the story of how a waitress taught a billionaire CEO the difference between price and value. Isabella Rossi didn't just climb the corporate ladder, she rebuilt it. 1 year later, she wasn't just the Chief Strategy Officer at Knightbridge Holdings. She was a full partner, and the company, under her and Damian's joint leadership, became the global standard in green energy. Julian Lowe was convicted of wire fraud and corporate espionage, and Marcus Thorne is still fighting lawsuits that Isabella, now a fully barred attorney, filed against him on behalf of her father. Sometimes the most brilliant mind in the room isn't the one at the head of the table. Sometimes it's the one you told to just pour the water. What did you think of Isabella's incredible rise? Was Damian right to be suspicious, or was his arrogance his biggest blind spot? Let us know in the comments below. If you love this story of karma, twists, and ultimate justice, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories where the underdog always gets the last word. We read all your comments and can't wait to see you in the next video.